Alex wiped the sweat from his forehead, blinking at the soft glow of the alien ship's panels. Every wire was perfectly in place, every circuit checked twice, and the life support systems hummed with reassuring stability. He had imagined that the moment he finished this final calibration, he could collapse into a chair, any chair, and revel in the satisfying feeling of a job done. Maybe even text his roommate about how alien life support systems were surprisingly similar to Earth HVAC units. Simple, mechanical, predictable. But when he turned to leave, expecting a polite nod and a wave goodbye, he found himself facing a small group of aliens whose expressions, if they could even be called expressions, made him freeze. The alien captain, Zalara, stood in front of him with a posture that somehow managed to convey both authority and something else, something intimate. Alex's first instinct was to bow. He did so with a degree of exaggerated human formality, and immediately realized the aliens didn't even have the same skeletal structure, so his bow looked more like a human's slouch collapsing under invisible gravity. Zalara's head tilted in what he assumed was polite acknowledgement, but her eyes, large, iridescent, and sparkling like some kind of cosmic jelly, seemed almost amused. Alex's stomach flipped. "Thank you, human," Zalara said in a voice smooth enough to be considered a melody in a classical sense, yet somehow carrying an undercurrent of playful command. "But before you depart, we request one final task." Alex blinked. "Final task?" he said cautiously. I thought I completed everything. The navigation recalibration, the power sync, the—" "Ah, yes," Zalara interrupted, hands folding in front of her in a gesture that suggested elegance, patience, and an unknowable expectation all at once. "All that is done. Perfectly. But this is different." Alex's brain pinged with possibilities. Did they need another wiring fix? Maybe a sensor misalignment? Perhaps some undocumented protocol he had overlooked? His chest tightened as he mentally prepared a list of potential technical failures he might have missed. He straightened his shoulders, trying to look confident despite the prickling unease creeping along his spine. Sure. What do you need?" The other aliens around Zalara, a small cadre of female technicians and officials, leaned forward slightly. Their movements were fluid, like liquid in zero gravity, their curiosity palpable. Alex's pulse picked up. Something about the way they tilted their heads, their large, multifaceted eyes glimmering in the ship's lights, made him feel uncomfortably observed. Not in a technical sense. Something more personal. Zalara continued. "Humans are unusual. There are qualities you possess we cannot fully comprehend. Physical, emotional, behavioral. We wish to study them. To experience them." Alex froze, and his mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Study them?" he repeated. "Like science study?" Zalara's lips curved into the closest approximation of a smile he had ever seen. "In a manner of speaking," she said. "But this is practical. Necessary. Final. Before you leave. A human demonstration." Alex's mind tried to map this onto something tangible. Laboratory testing? Behavioral observation? Maybe a survey? Maybe a quick questionnaire? Then it dawned on him, slower than he would have liked. They weren't asking about circuits. They were asking about him. Specifically, his human charm. Oh. He swallowed hard. Right. Charm. Of course. He immediately regretted saying it aloud. That word sounded ridiculous in the echoing chamber, almost laughable. And the way Zalara's head tilted, fascinated and approving, made him feel as if he had just confirmed his role in some absurd interstellar sitcom. Before he could protest, the aliens handed him a set of garments. Alex stared at the strange fabrics, shimmering, form-fitting, and completely unlike anything human, though vaguely reminiscent of ceremonial robes crossed with, well, something that might be considered alluring if one's cultural reference points were entirely alien. He gingerly held one up, trying not to grimace, imagining himself parading around in them in front of a group of beings who clearly had a very different definition of modesty. "You must demonstrate," Zalara said. Human gestures of allure, charm, and humor. We wish to experience these fully. Alex's internal scream was almost audible. Gestures of allure? He repeated, voice cracking slightly. His brain was flipping through every possible scenario. Do I wink? Smile? Nod seductively? Laugh awkwardly? Hug them? Bow? All at once? The aliens had no concept of subtlety, apparently, because they stepped closer, their expressions expectant, their postures fluid and undulating. Alex tried to take a step back, tripped over a panel, and nearly collided with a floating control console. He straightened quickly, attempting to appear poised, and then realized he had completely forgotten which way was forward. Zalara's hand hovered near his shoulder in what he interpreted as either guidance or gentle admonition. His heart hammered. Okay, he muttered under his breath. Okay, just be human. Don't mess this up. He attempted the first demonstration, a smile. It came out awkward, toothy, and nervous, and he immediately panicked, trying to adjust it. The aliens reacted with a noise somewhere between a giggle and a melodic chime, leaning closer as if that very awkwardness was fascinating. Next came the attempted wink. Alex practiced in the air, ended up blinking both eyes, and accidentally leaned too close to Zalara. She raised an eyebrow, or the nearest equivalent of one, and tilted her head with something that might have been amusement. His face turned bright red, though he had no idea how visible it was under the alien lighting. They made gestures back at him, mimicking his awkward poses and exaggerating them in a way that was both ridiculous and strangely flattering. Alex couldn't help laughing at the absurdity. He tripped again over a floating console wire, caught himself just in time, and ended up accidentally brushing against Zalara's arm. She didn't recoil. Instead, her gaze lingered, curious and amused, and Alex felt a strange warmth surge through him, entirely unrelated to the exertion or embarrassment. At that moment, he realized, this was never going to be just a technical job. He was trapped in a hilarious, humiliating, and potentially very romantic experiment with beings whose understanding of humanity was both literal and chaotic. And somehow, he didn't want to escape just yet. Alex followed the aliens into a larger chamber, and immediately his brain registered this was not just a workspace. Glowing patterns traced the walls and shifting geometric shapes, soft luminescent orbs floated midair, and the floor had a gentle hum that seemed to vibrate beneath his feet. Every detail screamed ceremonial, but with a purpose that Alex couldn't quite parse. The aliens hovered around him, limbs moving fluidly in zero gravity, their attention focused on him with a level of intensity that made his stomach twist in equal parts excitement and terror. Here, Zalara said, her voice smooth, calm, and just teasing enough to make Alex's pulse spike. This is where humans demonstrate their abilities. She gestured expansively, and the other females arranged themselves in neat semicircles. Alex blinked. Abilities? He asked cautiously, already suspecting he would regret the answer. Zalara nodded. Charm. Humor. Allure. Humor paired with allure. Alex's jaw dropped slightly. Humor paired with allure? He tried to imagine this in human terms. Stand-up comedy? Speed dating? Somehow neither seemed sufficient. He cleared his throat and attempted the first step, smiling. He tried to make it relaxed and confident. Instead, he looked like a man who had just discovered his shirt was on backward while a crowd of people watched. The aliens leaned forward, eyes wide and glimmering, their reactions somewhere between curiosity, admiration, and laughter. Alex felt a surge of panic, followed immediately by a ridiculous sense of pride. Hey, I made someone laugh, even if they're not human. Next, he attempted a wink, picturing some suave, movie-style human charm. Instead, he ended up blinking both eyes wildly. Zalara tilted her head, her expression unreadable, or maybe reading him perfectly. One of the smaller technicians mimicked him, and their version of a wink was so exaggerated and contorted that Alex couldn't stop laughing. His laughter only encouraged the aliens, who began making sounds that resembled musical chimes. Alex's attempts at speaking and joking quickly escalated into a hilarious game of mimicry and improvisation. Every time he tried to act like a confident human, the aliens distorted it in ways that were both absurd and charming. At one point, Alex tried a playful gesture, leaning slightly and pointing at one of the floating orbs as though to include it in a joke. The aliens misinterpreted it as a formal mating signal. His face burned hotter than the ship's reactor coils. I didn't mean that," he stammered, waving his hands helplessly. The aliens, however, only leaned closer, clearly intrigued. Zalara hovered right beside him, and for the briefest second, their shoulders brushed. Alex felt a strange electric thrill shoot through him, and immediately tripped over a cable running along the floor. He fell forward, arms flailing, but somehow ended up in a sort of awkward, lopsided bow. The aliens reacted with delight, clapping, or whatever their equivalent of clapping was, before floating slightly backward to mimic his pose. Alex's heart pounded, partly from embarrassment, partly from exhilaration, and partly from the fact that Zalara's gaze lingered on him in a way that suggested she was genuinely impressed. "You're quite human," she said, the words carrying more weight than Alex could process. Trying to recover some semblance of dignity, Alex attempted humor. He recounted a simple human joke, the kind that relied on wordplay. The aliens exploded in laughter, rolling on floating pads in zero gravity, their melodic giggles filling the room. Alex was shocked, then relieved, then terrified. He was succeeding in communicating, in connecting, in entertaining, and somehow it was all far more intimate than he had anticipated. As the demonstration continued, the aliens started to compete subtly. Each wanted to replicate his gestures, his awkward smiles, his failed winks. Alex's initial panic faded into a strange confidence. If they're going to copy everything I do, I might as well lean into it. He exaggerated a dramatic bow, flailed his arms in a theatrical flourish, and even attempted a little human dance, an odd shuffling step he remembered from a party years ago. The aliens mimicked him, some more clumsily than others, creating a scene that was chaotic, absurd, and hysterically funny. Through all of this, Alex noticed Zalara lingering closer than the others. Every time he tripped or stammered, she would float just a fraction closer, her eyes following him with a combination of amusement and fascination. Her proximity made his pulse race and his gestures more erratic, which only increased the alien's delight. In a sense, he was performing, but also improvising a kind of human charm that was entirely accidental. His clumsiness was turning into charisma, his awkward jokes into entertainment, his nervous gestures into something oddly magnetic. By the end of what felt like an eternity of hilarious demonstrations, the aliens had adopted nearly every one of Alex's quirks as part of their ceremonial ritual. What began as a simple test had turned into a full-blown cultural adoption of human eccentricities. Alex, exhausted and flushed, sank against one of the glowing panels, barely able to catch his breath. Zalara hovered beside him, her voice soft and approving. "You have done more than teach. You have inspired." Alex blinked. "Inspired? From tripping over cables?" She smiled, an expression so subtly intimate it sent a shiver down his spine. "Your chaos is compelling. Your humor is infectious. You are human." He swallowed hard, trying to hide the ridiculous warmth spreading through him. Somehow, in the midst of this absurd, chaotic test, Alex realized something important. He was not just amusing the aliens. He was connecting. He was human, and they were fascinated, and maybe, just maybe, he was starting to enjoy the attention in a way that was far more thrilling than any technical accomplishment could ever be. The chambers shimmered with light as the aliens began experimenting with his gestures themselves, each copying him in exaggerated, funny, and flirtatiously awkward ways. Alex couldn't help but laugh along, heart racing, trapped in a whirlwind of chaos, admiration, and the faint, electric thrill of Zalara's gaze lingering on him longer than strictly necessary. Word of Alex's demonstration spread through the colony faster than he could have imagined. Within minutes, the chamber was filled with more aliens than he had ever seen in one place, all converging with wide, glimmering eyes and fluid, curious movements. It was as if every female in the colony had been summoned to witness the human charm experiment. Alex froze in the doorway, blinking rapidly as dozens of eyes turned toward him, all reflecting a mixture of curiosity, excitement, and what he could only describe as playful expectation. His pulse skyrocketed. Oh no! Oh no! Oh no! Zalara floated beside him, calm and collected, but even she was now slightly flustered, at least as flustered as a being with a smooth, semi-translucent skin and 3 sets of flexible arms could be. You must continue, she said softly, her voice carrying that same teasing cadence that made Alex's stomach twist. They are eager to learn. Alex swallowed hard and took a tentative step forward. Every instinct screamed at him to run, but running in zero gravity, surrounded by dozens of beings floating effortlessly, seemed both impossible and inadvisable. He tried to calm himself. Okay. Smile. Be human. Don't panic. Just be human. He attempted a greeting, a simple human wave, and immediately discovered the alien's interpretation of gestures was anything but simple. They leaned forward, mimicked him in exaggerated forms, and somehow made the act look like a synchronized display of seduction and admiration. Alex stumbled back, trying to disentangle himself from the spiraling chaos. One alien reached out and lightly brushed his hand. Another tried to copy a wink, accidentally closing both eyes and tilting her head like a spinning top. The resulting effect was both hysterical and strangely intimate. He attempted humor next. He remembered a simple joke. Why did the chicken cross the galaxy? He hesitated, uncertain if humor would translate, and then delivered the punchline with the most dramatic flair he could muster. The aliens erupted into melodic laughter, their bodies floating in playful arcs, bumping lightly into each other in zero gravity. One of them accidentally collided with Alex, sending him spinning midair and landing him in a precarious, face-first slide across a glowing floor panel. Zalara reached out a hand, steadying him, and for the briefest second their eyes met. It was electric. Alex felt a jolt he could not explain, not just from embarrassment but from something far more human and dangerously distracting. Why am I feeling this? He thought, heart hammering. The captain smiled subtly, or at least as close to a human smile as he could recognize, and his mind went blank. The aliens, undeterred by the chaos, began competing among themselves, each trying to mimic Alex's awkward gestures, exaggerated smiles, and clumsy winks. What started as a demonstration had now turned into a full-blown contest. Who could replicate human charm most accurately, or most amusingly? Alex, for his part, flailed, tripped, and gestured wildly, accidentally inventing new variations on the routines he had performed earlier. Every mistake became a new trend, quickly adopted by the watching aliens with enthusiastic, exaggerated mimicry. He had, without intending to, created a full cultural phenomenon. At one point, he attempted a casual leaning pose, intending to appear relaxed and confident. One of the aliens, not understanding gravity quite like humans, drifted into him in an unexpected way, resulting in a gentle, prolonged brush of arms. Alex froze, heart-thudding, and felt a heat rise to his face he could not explain. Zalara drifted closer, her proximity magnifying the sensation, and for the first time, he realized that these interactions were no longer purely comedic or instructional, they were flirtatious. Trying to regain composure, Alex attempted a human dance step, a simple shuffle he remembered from a friend's party years ago. The aliens copied it in exaggerated forms, spinning, flipping, and twirling in ways that defied both physics and logic. Alex nearly collided with Zalara, and she caught him with a gentle hold, laughing softly, her eyes sparkling with amusement. The laughter, shared between them, created a strange intimacy amid the chaos. Alex's awkwardness, once a liability, had become his charm, a human trait that the aliens found both irresistible and entertaining. The chamber became a whirlwind of flailing limbs, giggles, and playful collisions. Alex was exhausted but exhilarated, caught in the middle of a chaotic symphony of admiration, mimicry, and flirtation. At one point, he attempted a subtle wink, and the aliens responded with an orchestrated mimicry that left him spinning midair, laughing so hard he nearly forgot to breathe. Zalara's hand brushed his arm again, lingering just long enough to make his heart stutter. This is ridiculous. And yet, somehow perfect. By the end of the demonstration, the aliens had fully embraced Alex's quirks as a new part of their ritual. His clumsy gestures, failed winks, and awkward smiles had become canonical, celebrated, and copied by every female in the chamber. Alex leaned against a floating console, panting, flushed, and completely overwhelmed. Zalara hovered beside him, her gaze lingering in a way that made his pulse race. "You have done more than teach," she murmured, her voice soft, warm, and impossibly enticing. "You have inspired." Alex blinked, unable to speak. He tried to respond with a witty remark, but his mouth refused to cooperate. Instead, he simply smiled, awkwardly, imperfectly, entirely human, and found that Zalara's smile in return was enough. In that moment, amidst the laughter, floating aliens, and chaotic charm, he realized he had not only survived the test but had connected with them in a way no human had before. His heart was pounding, his mind was spinning, and he was completely, utterly trapped in the delightful chaos of being human among aliens who adored his imperfection. Alex staggered toward what he thought was the exit, convinced that surviving the chaotic charm demonstration was enough. Surely, he could now leave this bizarre chamber, float back to his quarters, and never think about interstellar human flair lessons again. He paused, hand on the glowing door panel, and froze. Every alien in the room, including Zalara, had turned toward him. Their expressions were simultaneously expectant and mischievous, and a sinking realization hit him: the final request was far from over. Zalara floated closer, her presence magnetic, yet teasingly formal. "Human," she said softly, letting each word roll over him like warm, electric silk. "You have completed the demonstration, admirably. But there is one final matter." Alex swallowed hard, feeling his throat constrict. "One final matter?" he repeated, voice trembling slightly. He tried to suppress the rising panic. Surely it wasn't. He glanced around nervously. The next step in this bizarre mating ritual? He had survived tripping, floating, and accidental flirtation so far. How much more could there possibly be? Zalara's gaze lingered on him in a way that made his pulse accelerate uncontrollably. "Yes," she said, voice soft but commanding. "You have charmed the colony. Your human chaos, your humor, your awkward gestures, they are now culturally significant. And therefore—" She paused, letting the words hang, the subtle teasing making Alex's imagination run wild. "You are bound by our interstellar contract." Alex's mind scrambled. Bound? Contract? Like legal? Interstellar law? He tried to laugh, but it came out as a strangled cough. The aliens around him made melodic noises that sounded suspiciously like giggling at his confusion. He swallowed, feeling both terrified and strangely thrilled. Zalara floated closer, hand hovering near his shoulder, brushing against him just enough to make him shiver. "It is ceremonial," she continued, "but binding. You are now part of our cultural rituals. You cannot leave, not yet." Her eyes sparkled as if daring him to protest. Alex's heartbeat went haywire. He looked around frantically. Could he make a break for it? No, every exit was subtly blocked by floating aliens, all staring at him expectantly, some leaning forward, mimicking his previous gestures, and others simply smiling in a way that made him feel ridiculously exposed. The chaos of earlier had now transformed into a completely intentional web, a trap of admiration, ritual, and flirtation. Alex's instinct was to resist, but a different part of him, the part that had secretly enjoyed Zalara's lingering gaze, the playful mimicry, the shared laughter, wanted nothing more than to stay. He tried a casual shuffle backward, stumbled on an unseen wire, and ended up pressed against a glowing console. Zalara floated beside him again, her hand brushing his arm, lingering just long enough to send a warmth through his chest that had nothing to do with exertion. "You see," she whispered, leaning just close enough that he could feel her breath, or the alien equivalent, on his cheek. We find your imperfection irresistible, and therefore necessary. Alex's mind short-circuited. Necessary? Me? Imperfect? Irresistible? He attempted to stammer, but words failed him entirely. Instead, he offered a sheepish smile, which seemed to earn a soft, approving hum from the surrounding aliens. Zalara's eyes gleamed with amusement. Do not resist, she said, voice low, teasing, melodic. This is for your benefit. And ours. She extended a hand toward him. Alex hesitated, then slowly reached out. Their fingers brushed, and the electricity of contact, human nerves meeting alien energy, shot through him. His pulse raced, and for a moment, the chaotic charm demonstration seemed trivial compared to the intimacy in that single gesture. The aliens around them began a final ceremonial routine, all imitating Alex's earlier awkward movements, but in synchronized, exaggerated form. It was ridiculous, chaotic, and undeniably hilarious. Alex found himself caught in the middle, laughing, floating, stumbling, and somehow managing to maintain a tenuous balance. Every mistake, every accidental gesture, every nervous glance seemed to increase the colony's admiration and affection for him. His human flaws, once a source of panic, had become his ultimate strength. Zalara leaned even closer, her voice now a soft purr of amusement and affection. You see, human, we do not require perfection. We require you. Chaos, laughter, charm, all of it. All human. Her hand brushed his again, lingering, and Alex's face flushed hotter than he thought possible. The thrill of being simultaneously admired, adored, and lightly trapped was overwhelming. Finally, after what felt like hours of floating chaos, teasing, and laughter, Alex sank against the glowing console, exhausted but exhilarated. The aliens hovered around, some giggling, some attempting to mimic his most ridiculous gestures one last time. Zalara's presence beside him was steady, warm, and infinitely magnetic. She looked at him, eyes shining, and for a moment, words were unnecessary. Their shared laughter, the brush of her hand, the absurdity of the situation, it all spoke volumes. Alex realized, with a mix of relief and dread, that he was not leaving. He was now part of their world, part of their rituals, part of something chaotic, ridiculous, and intoxicatingly intimate. His pulse still racing, he allowed himself a grin, awkward, imperfect, entirely human. Zalara mirrored it, a soft, teasing smile that promised both challenge and warmth. He knew in that moment that he was trapped by affection, admiration, and interstellar bureaucracy, but for the first time in a long time, he didn't care. Chaos had never felt so appealing, so alive, and so undeniably romantic. Floating amid giggling aliens, glowing lights, and his own laughter, Alex accepted his fate, utterly flustered, utterly human, and thoroughly, absurdly smitten.